questions is split into three parts. Okay, number one was why marry Jewish. The second was why not have a convert. So if I do find a nice non-Jewish girl, just have a convert. And also, I see a soul in this person. This person, according to you, is not Jewish, but I see there's a soul. Do they have a soul? Like, how do you look at Jews versus non-Jews? So that was the question, and we're going to start answering. Okay, so I told him, I'm glad you're asking the question. The fact that you're asking proves that somewhere deep down within you, you are Jewish enough to be bothered by it. Some people are not so Jewish inside, and they are not so bothered by it, by the question. They won't even ask the question. It's very rare. We hold that there's always something called a pintel yid, a small little spark of a Jew deep inside, and everyone, and we'll see why, but many people, no matter where they hold Jewishly, will ask me, this question. No matter how hard, no matter how little do they feel they are Jewish, they would still ask this question. So, I want to share with you, and allow me to share with you a few facts. Facts are something that we can't argue with. With facts, you can't say, I can't believe he just said that, or how could he have said that, right? It's a fact. Facts are facts. They speak better than any other words, and you can't argue with them, okay? So I'm going to go through some facts as we talk into the answers. So first thing to understand is that intermarriage is rising in America, and that's at a very high rate. Intermarriage rates seem to have risen substantially over the last 5 decades. That's 50 years. Among Jewish respondents who have gotten married since 2000, this is a Pew report, 6 in 10 have a non-Jewish spouse. Okay, so 6 in 10 people that are married today, that are Jewish, are married to a non-Jewish person. Among those who got married in the 1980s, that was 4 in 10. And among the Jews who got married before 1970, there were only 17% that had a non-Jewish spouse, okay? So we're going up from way over 50% to 17% of intermarriage. So I think the question is important, since the decision that is made without study and research is what we call an uninformed decision. Does anyone know what an uninformed decision does or means? What's an uninformed decision?
A blind choice.
A blind choice. Right? And uninformed decisions are not really it's not a decision, because you're really just going with a feeling, you're going with how it makes you feel, and this is how it's not informed. This is how I feel, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to do. So it's always important whenever you make a decision to think. So that's another reason why this question is important for the person that's asking it. It's become normal enough today that it's even considered racist to ask this question. How dare you even ask, is it okay for a Jew to marry a non-Jew, or is it not okay? Okay, how can you even say that? And you know what? I think it's true. If there's no difference in you, in the way you feel Jewishly between you and a non-Jew, if you are not that Jewish, then really it is racist, or it may seem racist to say, why are we different? I am the same, I live exactly the same country, we watch the same movies, we do the same things. What is the difference between me and you? So if there's no difference, that's why people are going to start saying it's racist, because there are no differences. Okay, so here goes another report, just to prove that you're more likely to marry someone non-Jewish if you are Jewish. Okay, 79% of married Jews that claim they have no religion, they say they're Jewish but they have no religion, they have a spouse who is not Jewish, compared with 36% among the Jews by religion. So Jews by religion are only 36% of them are married to non-Jews. 79% of the Jews with no religion are married to non-Jews. So the chances are that you're going to be married to someone who's not Jewish is much higher if you are not that Jewish. Make sense? And I understand why it would be considered racist for them. But let me ask you, is it racist for a Chinese person, and I'm filming this because I think I'm okay with saying this, right? Is it racist for a Chinese person to say that they want to marry someone who's Chinese? Is that racist? Why? But it's not fair. There's people that are different races out there? Why do you only want a Chinese person? No one would say that. Is it racist if a black person says, I want to marry someone who's black? Right? Is that racist? No. Is it racist if me as a religious Jew says, I want to marry a religious... Would anyone here, if I was dating, because I look pretty religious, and I am, and I always was, so if I was dating, would someone come up to me and say, hey, I've got this perfect girl for you, she's religious? I'm like, really? That's amazing. But she's religious Christian. Right? Would anyone suggest that to me? No, because they know where I'm holding in my Jewishness, and there's certain things that you won't even question based on the level that you're on and the way that you are. The reality is, the less Jewish you are, the less likely you are to marry a Jew. Okay? So the first point, hey, come sit down, come sit here. So the first point, we're talking about why marry Jewish. Okay? So the first point, so the first point you need to know is that no matter, if you're asking me this question, you are much more Jewish than you think. And I'm going to prove it to you right now, okay? Listen to this. 94% of US Jews, including 97% of Jews by religion and 83% of Jews of no religion, say they are proud to be Jewish. They just say they don't have religion, but they still claim they're proud to be Jewish. So there's a certain Jewishness in them that's proud, that they feel proud of. 3/4 of US Jews, including 85% of Jews by religion, 42% of Jews of no religion, also say they have a strong sense of belonging to the Jewish people. The fact you asked me the question proves that there's something Jewish in you. Again, that is a strong proof. But let me prove to you again that we are much more Jewish than you think, okay? This is called the Jewish test. Are you ready for the Jewish test?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I ask you, if I say a certain word, I want you to think, I'm going to say a word, close your eyes, and think of a word that comes immediately, the first word that comes to your mind when I say that word. Okay? If you want, you can do it on your phone. I don't have a pen and paper, I didn't realize, but you can do it on your phone. As soon as I say something, yeah, does everyone have a note on their phone, a note page? Okay, so as soon as I say something, tell me what word you think of. Okay? I'm going to do it right now. Okay? Are you guys ready? This is called the Jewish test. Oh, that's good.
I got the answer.
Okay. Question, word number 1. Okay, what comes to your mind when I say this? A cross.
Christian.
Write it down. Don't say it. Write it down. Don't tell me. Okay, next one. Christmas tree.
New York.
Don't say anything. Star of David. Jesus on the cross. Torah scroll. Gefilte fish. I'll give you some time.
Yeah.
Chuppah. Mezuzah. Menorah. Chabad.
No, that's from Menorah.
Oh, that's goes from Menorah. Beautiful. The Pope. The Western Wall. Bar mitzvah. Pork. Are you guys keeping up? Passover. Jews for Jesus. What word comes into your mind?
Silly.
Okay. Okay, let's say. Okay, write that down. Write any word that comes into your mind. Okay, what did you get when I said cross?
Jesus.
Jesus. Okay. Christmas tree.
Green.
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus.
Consumerism.
Okay. Star of David. Jesus on the cross.
Mel Gibson.
Romans. Scary. Mel Gibson. Irrational.
Jesus.
What? Jesus. What? Okay. If you don't remember, it doesn't matter. Did I say Torah scroll?
Yeah.
What did you get?
My life, religious.
Your life, religious, Jews, gefilte fish.
Chabad.
Pesach.
Pesach, Ashkenaz. Chuppah,
Marriage.
mezuzah,
Door.
menorah,
Chabad.
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. The Pope,
Chabad is good.
Vatican.
the Vatican, Western Wall,
Jerusalem.
Judaism.
Holy, Judaism, Jerusalem, Bar Mitzvah,
Candy.
Rite of passage.
candy, nice. Rite of passage, pork,
Not kosher.
Bacon.
treif.
Ayo.
What else did we say? Passover,
Moshe.
Matzah.
plagues, matzah. Jews for Jesus,
Silly.
abomination, silly, despicable. Guys, abomination, despicable, confusion. Do you realize that if someone Christian hears you even saying that, they'll start telling you things? That these tests have been done in rooms where this has happened, where they brought in multi-faith families and they started saying the words that are related to one side of the faith and words that relate to the other side of the faith. And they asked them, what do you feel when you hear these words? And sometimes, as soon as they start saying what they felt, the other side is like, I can't believe you just said that. But that's nothing, it's just how I felt, right? So there's a certain Jewishness that's in you, that's innate with you, because you were brought up that way. And it's stuck very strongly in you. And that is a point to think about. You are far more Jewish than you believe. Okay? And we're going to see how much more you are Jewish than you believe. Okay? Now, if somebody tells me, well, I don't care. I actually like Jesus on the cross. I'm Jewish, but I don't care. I don't mind the Christmas tree. I still think that you should care. And I'll tell you why. It's true for now, but it will most likely change in the future. A smart person thinks ahead. How do we know that? It says that in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avot. Ezu chacham haro'eh et hanolad. Someone who's smart thinks, sees the future. Okay? A smart person looks ahead, and looks ahead of the romance and the love that he's feeling right now. Something much more, right? A smart person thinks about his children when it comes to marriage. Thinks about his grandchildren when it comes to marriage. Thinks about many things that are beyond just the romance that's happening right now. And guess what? Jewish involvement grows as you get older. You think about the demographic that attends shuls, synagogues. What kind of people go to shuls and synagogues? Which kind of people do you see there?
Mature.
Parents, Jewish people, yes. What age? What age demographic?
Older folks, yes.
I'm just saying the truth.
What?
Older folks.
Older people? Would you see some kids there? Would you see a bar mitzvah kid? Yeah, you'd see kid. The last age you'll see is a 29-year-old, right, who's not yet married. Or a 26-year-old. That's why they have birthright, to try and keep that age group still busy with Judaism. But they're not as involved. Make sense? Okay, so that's the age where people are dating. Meaning, right now, Judaism's not so into you right now, but as time goes on, it's going to come much more. Okay? Think about the demographic that attend synagogues. Right? You have children. Why is it that Jewish involvement grows as you get older?
Family.
You have a family,
Knowledge.
children. You have what knowledge do you get? You become smarter.
You get wiser.
You lose some brain cells if you get older. What? Why do you get wiser?
Start thinking what's the purpose.
Connection.
You start thinking about the purpose of life. Why do you start thinking? Because what about people that you know start dying? Right? People that you grew up with, people that you start, that makes you come more thinking about, where am I going? Where am I? Where am I from? You start coming more spiritual. So all of these things are a reason that people feel they want to be more involved with their community. They want to question. They want to learn about their heritage, their Judaism. You want community. You become more spiritual. Listen to this. This is a famous psychologist from Washington. Her name was Carol Rayburn. She's not alive anymore. But this is what she said. People with long dormant beliefs sometimes have sudden religious awakenings and renewed interest in the roots once the kids arrive. You see a little kid, he goes to what kind of school do I want him to go to? What kind of education do I want? Do I just want that child to know about TV stars and Netflix? Or do I want him to have some kind of Rosh Hashanah education and Jewish education and beyond, right? Does that make sense? So once you have kids, you start remembering your youth, and it wakes you up. Even from a non-religious perspective, the likelihood of divorce amongst interfaith marriages are almost double. That does not mean that you're guaranteed to divorce, because there are many interfaith people that are still married, but it means the risks are higher. It's like drink driving. Okay? If you drink drive, are the risks of having an accident high? Yes. Are you guaranteed to have an accident because you drink driving? Is everyone that drives drunk going to have an accident? No. Okay, so just like drink driving has a risk of an accident, it does not guarantee you will be in an accident. But at the end of the day, the risks are much higher. Okay, don't put yourself in a place of risk. Okay, number 3, point number 3 is that love is not enough. Okay, based on the situation in America today, the divorce rate of America as a whole proves that love is not enough. We need to look in a person, not just if I love them or I feel good with them. I need to look for similarities in my upbringing. If there's too many differences, it's going to cause problems in my marriage. If there are similar goals, what's our end goal? What's your end goal? What's my end goal? Right? You have to look at the bigger picture when you start dating someone. Love in itself is not enough to prove that someone is made for you. Okay? That they're your soulmate. Practical challenges. Here's some examples, point number 4 that a person needs to think about. Some examples of practical challenges of interfaith marriages. Right? Who will run the wedding? Where will the wedding be? Who will bury us? Will we be buried together? Where will that be? Right? What type of conversations do we want in our home? Should we have circumcision or baptism? What kind of holidays do we want? What kind of house do I want in my house? Do I want mezuzahs or do I want crosses? Where should I give my charity if I'm making a lot of money? On the one hand, my upbringing, my community that I brought up in is asking for money. On the other hand, my spouse may want money for a different cause, right? Where will there be pressure from my family, from her family, against the way that we're living? If I want to be Jewish and she says, yes, I agree, let's grow up our children Jewish, but the family of hers are very against it, that's a problem too. There may be pressure. Where will you live? There are many practical challenges that need to be thought about in an interfaith marriage. Point number 5, there's going to be resentment. Why is there resentment? Resentment from the spouse and resentment from the child. Well, for the spouse, if you start getting more into your Judaism, they're going to say, I didn't get into this for this. Why is he so into his Rosh Hashanah thing? Why is he so into Passover, going back to his family? That's not what I got married for. When we were married, we were not like this. Suddenly he's got, right? So there starts to be a certain sense of resentment. They have resentment from the child. Do you know why? If the child is doing something Jewish, and the one parent that he's with is not the Jewish one, he has to hide it, because that may be something they don't like to see. If he's going to be running to synagogue and they want him to go to church, then when they do go to synagogue, he's going to do things behind the back, and it's going to cause a certain resentment to one side, either to the father's side or the mother's side. But there will be resentment from the child. Right? How can he speak Hebrew? I never knew this language. Why are they teaching my child Hebrew? This is weird, right? This is a question that a interfaith spouse can ask. Listen to this quote from the book. By the way, this is all from a book, Why Marry Jewish, written by Doran Kornbluth. I definitely recommend you getting it. He says, it's a great paradox wanting to be close for marriage, yet also wanting to be in a different religion. So you come close to someone, you're working hard to be, right? You're coming close to them, but you also argue or have a great difference in your essence of your religion. So it's kind of a paradox. You want to be more involved with your religion, but you also want to be more close to somebody. Okay. Strong identity. When both parents are Jewish, it is easier to feel part of a community. You both know exactly which part you feel part of. Right? To ensure a family stability, when you have both parents that are Jewish, or both parents that are Christian, or both parents that are Muslim, you ensure family stability with that family. Why? because the child knows that this is who I am. This is my identity. There's no questions of what am I? Am I more this or am I more that? Right? The child has more self-esteem. He grows up thinking this is the right education. This is the right way that I should be. They have self-esteem in themselves and their children.
Doesn't this partly depend on the parenting though? If the parents are very Jewish or or they just identify culturally as Jewish, then the child will be more inclined to.
Definitely. But if the parents are not so Jewish, right, then it's definitely going to be harder. As it is, the identity of the child is going to be challenged, right?
Their first choice is they're Jewish, so I'm Jewish.
Exactly. But if the parents don't have a strong identity, which is normally what happens when they intermarry, so you have one parent who's Jewish, one child who's not, one parent who's not, and the child's really pulled apart. Even though he doesn't know much about his Judaism, he's still much more pulled apart. No, am I this side or am I this side? I like what my dad does, but the child's just confused.
There's definitely more conflict.
There's more conflict, no matter how religious you are. Okay, but that, by the way, is all a non-Jewish perspective. Nothing to do with religion. This is all a non-Jewish perspective, whether it's Judaism or any other religion. If you have differences, the chances of it lasting is much more difficult. But let's answer the question from a Jewish perspective. Listen to this. In 1935, does anyone know how many Jews there were? 1939, sorry. How many Jews were there in the world?
20 million?
16.6 million Jews worldwide. Majority of them, which was 9.5 million Jews, or 50% of the Jews, lived in Europe. Okay, this is according to the Della Pergola's estimates. By the end of World War II, in 1945, how many was in the people? How many Jews did we have? We actually had 11, right? We had 16.6. Take 6 from that is how much? 10.6. But we actually grew outside of Europe. Okay, so we had around 11 million Jews. Okay, that's all. Since then, the global Jewish population estimated by Pew Research at 14 million as of 2010. That's not that many, right? In 70 years, 2010 was 60 years. How many? 14 million. How many did we grow from the time of the Holocaust? 3 million. Isn't that crazy? It's nothing. How do I know it's crazy? I'll prove it to you in a second. It is smaller than it was before. Estimated percentage of 40 million as of 2010 has risen only 3 million. But we're still smaller than the numbers that we were before the Holocaust. How many were we before the Holocaust? 16.6. Right? And on average, in America, how many Jews right now in America is 1.8 per person. It's 1.8 per person. The population growth rate is 1.8 per person. That means if it's 1.8 from 60 years ago, and it was 11 million, how many should we be having today?
22.
1.8, 11 million plus multiplied by 1.8 is how much?
20 million.
It's 20 million. It's almost 20 million. I did the calculation. It's 19.8 million. So we should be today at 19.8 million Jews. And how many are we? Only 14 million. Where did all those Jews go? Do you know where? Intermarriage and assimilation. People are just silently giving up their Judaism just like that. We're still less than before the Holocaust. You take any country, it grows at 1. By the way, 1.8 is today. In the 60s, the birth rate was 4 per person. That was the norm. Today, it's 1.8. So it should be even more than 20 million. Right? Because over the years, our birth rate has gone down, but we should have had a lot more than 20 million. This should not make you despaired, because the Jewish promise is that we as Jews will always be around. There's a promise in the Torah that we as a people will always be around. The Torah says, "V'afkam zot," even so, no matter where you are, when you're in the enemies, lands of your enemies, I will never forsake you, I will not give up on you, I will not cut off the Jewish nation to take away my covenant that I made with you. I am your God. Hashem promises that the Jews will always be in this world. Okay? V'zacharti lahem brit rishonim. I will remember their original covenant, which I took them out of Egypt in the eyes of the nations, to be their God. I am Hashem. Okay, this is the words of Leo Tolstoy. a famous writer and Christian. Listen to what he says. The Jew is the emblem of eternity. He whom neither slaughter nor torture of thousands of years could destroy. He whom neither fire nor sword nor inquisition was able to wipe off the face of the earth. He who was the first to produce the oracle of God. He who has been for so long the guardian of prophecy and who has transmitted it to the rest of the world. Such a nation cannot be destroyed. The Jew is as everlasting as eternity itself. Isn't that beautiful? Well, we as Jews are here forever, according to... So even though you may be worried, and you may hear somebody say, yes, we have a simulation, don't worry, the Jews will always be here. The question is, will you be part of that people? Will your children, will your grandchildren be part of that people? That is the big question. Okay, there's many, many beautiful quotes about the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are very special. Just to quote famously Mark Twain, the Jews saw them all, survived them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert, but aggressive man. All things are mortal, but the Jews. All other forces pass, but the Jew remains. What is the secret of this immortality? That was Mark Twain's quote. Okay. Then there's many more. There's Paul Johnson, who gave humanity to the world. Okay. So if you want to be part of something great, you've got to be part of the Jewish people. And this is in your hands. Listen to this. If you have, in one generation, you have 3 kids. The second generation, how many will you have? How many grandkids will you have? 9. Third generation, how many? 27. Fourth, how many? Times 3? 81. Fifth, 243. Sixth, 729. Seventh, 2,187. Eighth generation, 6,561. Ninth generation, 19,683 children will be Jewish. And in the 10th generation, 59,049 people will be your grandchildren and Jewish. Okay, that's a lot if you make that one decision to marry someone Jewish. Your life is in your marriage. Listen to this quote by Rabbi Pesach Friedman. Who you marry affects every single aspect of your life. It affects your community. It affects your children. It affects all your future generations. The Jewish home is the single most important establishment in Jewish life. It outweighs any synagogue or temple. It's the most important thing in Judaism. A Jewish home, building a Jewish home. It outweighs any synagogue, any temple, even the holiest temple that was built by King Solomon. Can you imagine how important it is to build a Jewish home? Dangers of dating non-Jews with the intent to marry Jewish, right? Anyone tell you this? Anyone here would tell me that they would marry, right? Anyone here would say that they would never marry, they would only marry Jewish, but they would be willing to date non-Jewish. Anyone here would agree to that? I'll be willing to date non-Jewish, but will definitely only marry a Jew. Right? You used to say that? Anyone else here would say that? Well, normally I'd have a lot of hands. But after this whole class, maybe people are thinking twice. But generally, the dangers of dating somebody, right, that's not Jewish, just for the sake of dating them, knowing that you're definitely not going to marry them because you want to marry a Jew. Let's listen to some of the dangers of doing that. Number 1, you're asking for a lot of anti-Semitism. Why? Oh, he didn't even ever want me in the first place. He was just messing around, using me for his pleasures, right? The number 1, I believe this is the under-quoted problem that can easily cause a lot of anti-Semitism. You're just playing around with people, using them for your own pleasure, but then saying, I'm not going to, it's not, right? Don't ask what I've heard from people when I was on campus. Oh, Rabbi, it's just for practice. These are the words that I've heard, right? So it's
definitely brings a lot of anti-Semitism.
And it's not only bad anti-Semitism. Number 2, I'm being very open with these are the words that I've heard. Number 2, it's bad manners. Dating no one, knowing that you're not dating them for marriage in any way, is called bad manners. Also, dating leads to marriage, by the way, right? There's no such thing as I'm just dating. Right? Have you ever heard this? You can hear someone say, we were dating for 6 months. We never thought we were made for each other, but then we got married. Does anyone? Right? I'm traveling the world with her. We're just dating to date, but somehow you're not going to get married. Actually, if you're traveling with the person and you're having a good time around the world with them, and you're still getting along, the chances are you're getting pretty well along, right? You're getting along very well. So you're not just dating. Just dating ends up with, you know what it ends up with? She is amazing and I want to marry you, and you're on your knee, okay? Also, dating affects your attitude, okay? So if you constantly, we have this rule that the way you act affects your internal. So the external affects the internal. If you're constantly dating non-Jews, it would actually change the way you feel about dating to marry a Jew. So it could be 10 years ago you thought, oh, I want a Jewish spouse, but 10 years later, after dating many non-Jewish people, you may come to the realization it's not that bad, right? It's not that bad. So the idea of marrying a non-Jew becomes more and more acceptable at both a conscious and a subconscious level. This has been proven, again, by the Pew Report, that most people that marry non-Jews dated non-Jews before they married a non-Jew. Well, there goes the answer. Okay, so here's the last two parts of the question. It's very quick. The last part of it, that was the first question, which was why marry Jewish? And I answered both from a perspective of you are more Jewish than you think, and the second of if you still don't care, there are lots of reasons to be worried about it, because as you grow, you get more Jewish as well. Spirituality kicks in, and so on and so forth. There are problems with growing up children from multi-faith families, and you are part of an amazing people called the Jewish people. Don't give that up. Okay, so now the next part of the question was, why not have her convert? So if I find someone, I like her, she's not Jewish, why not have her convert? The answer is, you could. But, and there's many people that did convert, but, and there's a big but, what do you consider yourself? Do you consider yourself culturally Jewish? Or do you consider yourself religiously Jewish? You can't expect the person that you're dating to be more Jewish than you when you're dating her. So if let's say you say, I'm culturally Jewish and I want her to convert to be like me, which is culturally Jewish. Well, there's no such thing as converting just to be culturally Jewish. You don't need to convert to be more French and drink French wine. You don't need to convert to be culturally Italian. That doesn't need a conversion. You don't need a conversion to be more American. You just need a good accent and be crazy, right? You don't need a conversion to be more British. You just need to be able to take fish and chips all day, right? You don't need to be a conversion for those things. In order to convert, it's to take on Judaism the same way they did 3,300 years ago, and that needs a conversion. Right? The same way we got it on Mount Sinai. And what does that mean? You have to believe in God, that He gave the Torah to the Jewish people. Believe that Judaism is the true religion and not just accept it by default. Study what it says in the Torah. You don't have to actually know the whole Torah off by heart. It's not actually possible, but you have to study it. And absolutely commit, in front of a Beit Din, to commit to all the Torah's commandments. Okay? So if you want her to convert, she needs to really commit fully to that conversion. And there's another problem. The conversion, whenever we do a conversion, we need to prove that it's motivated for the sincere purpose of getting close to Torah and not for ulterior motives. Okay? And normally if you're dating that person and she's like, hey, I want to become Jewish because I like this Jewish guy, that's going to be a reason for us to actually be afraid that this conversion is not coming from the real motive. When we see that the requirements above are being filled, then I know that it's for the right reasons, and then she can convert. And that's why actually, in many places of conversion, they would actually suggest that they live apart until they actually go through the conversion to prove that this is really for the Jewishness and not for him or for my romance. Okay? And that's the second point. And the last question that they asked me was, does this person have a soul? I see a great person, she's not Jewish or he's not Jewish. Does that person have a soul? I feel like they have a soul. Why is it different than a Jewish soul? Right? And the answer is, that person does have a soul. Non-Jews also have a soul according to Judaism. According to Judaism, every human being has a soul. But there are different levels of the soul. There's nefesh, there's ruach, neshama, yechidah. There's many different levels. Soul is not something which you see. It can only be felt and logically shown. Okay? So let's just discuss slightly what is a soul. In order for anything to exist, it needs to have certain godly energy, God's light, in order for it to exist, according to Judaism. Okay, so in an inanimate object, for it to exist, it needs a ruach, it needs some kind of spirit in order to allow it to exist. And by the way, we can understand that today more than ever when we know how atoms work, which is basically just energy and light, which allows everything to exist. Okay? So we're getting to realize that everything that exists, even though this is just a book, it has crazy amount of energy which allows it to exist. Okay, so everything, even an inanimate object, needs godly energy in order for it to exist. A flower, which is a bit more than an object, also needs godly energy to exist. An animal, that needs a certain soul to exist. And a human definitely needs a soul to exist. The human has the most godly energy or potential in it. The human speaks. He clothes himself and is ashamed of his physicality. No other animal, besides for the human being, clothes itself. Why do we clothe ourselves? Right? Why are we shy of a physicality? Even when we eat, sometimes, if someone's watching us, the camera comes in your face as you're eating, you're like, you start behaving, you're embarrassed to show yourself overly immersed in physicality. Right? We as humans have a certain spiritual sense to us that is shown and proven different than anything else that exists. An animal doesn't get married. It just gets together, right? They don't get married. But humans have this thing where they make an agreement and they say, okay, we're not just going to get together. We're going to live in the same house. We're going to commit to each other. We'll write a document. We'll get married. That's a religious concept. Okay? So there's this moral, ethical idea behind us that no other animal in this world has. Okay? We can commit to truth. Humans can take themselves to the moon. We have a crazy ability to go way beyond ourselves. So here's the great point. Humans were created like God. We were created bidmuto, b'tselem Elokim. We were created in His formation, but also in His demut, which means in a similar way to God. What does that mean? There is nothing but God. God is infinite, right? According to Judaism, God is everywhere. So what does it mean that we were created like God? What does that mean? Does anyone know? What does it mean that we were created like God? If there's just God is everything. What does it mean that we were created in His formation? The answer is, the more you can affect things outside of yourself, the more godlike you are. Okay? The Jew, right, that means any human is much more godly than an animal. He's much more godly than an animate object because his potential to affect things around him is much greater. Meaning God gave us the ability to be like Him, not Him, to be like Him in the way that we can influence the world and influence things beyond us. An animal has much more influence than an object, and therefore it's got a much more spiritual energy behind it. A human being has the greatest spiritual energy behind it, and therefore it is the thing which was really created in the formation of God. Okay, that's what it means. The Jew who accepts all of the mitzvot is able to affect the world on a very large scale and therefore has much more soul energy or godly energy in him. We only see our soul energy when we start living to our full potential. So if you, let's say, have a human being that lives in the jungle and he's never lived in a human civilized society, right, just lived in the jungle, is he going to think he's much different than an animal? Lives like an animal, eats the food like the animal, doesn't talk to people, doesn't clothe itself. He may not think that he's very different to an animal. He'll live with his animals and think that it's the same. I am an animal, no difference. You only recognize your potential if you live up to your potential. So the person that was asking me that question didn't realize his power of soul that he has within himself, because he's never lived to the life of the mitzvot. When you start living a world of all these mitzvot, you start realizing your spiritual energy and your spiritual potential. Okay? So we only see our soul energy when we start living to our potential. A human that grows up in an environment that isn't able to see his potential will say, I am no different than any other animal. I'm no different than any other human. But when you live up to your full potential, you recognize how godly you truly are. And that is only seen when you start living a life of Torah and mitzvot. So that is the answer to do they have a soul? They do. But you have, because you have the mitzvot and you are Jewish, they can be Jewish if they want to convert. But right now you are Jewish and you have the commandment, according to a godly commandment, to keep the 613 mitzvot. Your potential is very, very high. And by the way, there's 248 active positive mitzvot and there's 365 negative. The 248 represent
The body.
different parts of your body. Okay, so every limb in your body is connected to one of those 248. There's actually 248 words in the Shema, which also represent every different part of your body. Interestingly enough, there's 365 negative commandments, and what does that represent?
A year.
A year. So you, with the mitzvot, have the ability to change the course of the year through those mitzvot. We understand, and when you study them, you realize how deep and effective they are to yourself, to the people around you, and the world. Okay? Ki hi chochmatchem uvinatchem le'enei amim, says in the Torah. When they see you doing Jewish, when the world sees you doing Jewish, they will say about you that there's something wise, there's something, I don't know what it is, but they have some kind of energy in this world. Whether you believe in it or not, you could see the effect that the Jews have had in the world, whether it's from Israel or throughout history to Christianity, how we affected that to the world, to the religions of the world. The Jews have had a tiny, tiny nation, but have a huge impact in lighting the world in so many ways. So that is the answer to the question. Does that sound good? Good answer?
Yes.
Great answer.
Okay, so I hope you remember that. Did anyone take notes? Of course not. No. So yeah, you did? Oh, you did? Okay. So just to remind you, the question was, why marry Jewish? Why not have a convert? And do they also have a soul? Why marry Jewish? You're much more Jewish than you think. I'll just go through the highlights. And if you tell me, I'm not so Jewish, I don't care, I'm not that Jewish, well, you may be Jewish as you get older. And even from a non-religious perspective, the likelihood of divorce is much higher. Just saying, I love that person is not enough. You need to see what is the greater picture. There are practical challenges. There's resentment that comes out of a multi-faith marriage. By the way, multiracial marriage also has a 10% higher divorce rate. So if you have someone from different races, Hispanic with someone who's American, or just by the fact that they're multiracial, there's differences, that causes 10% higher divorce rate. Isn't that crazy?
If their native language are different, like
That makes a higher,
as well.
as a whole, the research that has been done on interracial marriages, 10% higher of divorce rate. And that's also a risk.
What
Yeah.
about if they're Jewish but multiracial?
So that can make, honestly, like even with me, I am English, my wife's Israeli. That can make more challenges. I agree. Now we're not saying that because there's challenges you have to be exactly the same background, look the same, you have to be the same no two people are alike. No matter what you want, they're never going to be alike, but at least try and get as many similarities as you can. Yes, you're right. If you have you're very different, you're just forced into this relationship because people pushed you and said, yeah, this is for you, and you're like, wow, yeah, and I like her, she's pretty or whatever, but you're not made for each other, and you're very different, and your views are very different, and you're blinding yourself to that. Even if it's a Jew and another Jew, the likelihood of you getting divorced is very high. You have to see if you're compatible. Similar views, yes.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So I come from an interfaith family. My dad is Catholic and Spanish, Mexican, and Italian.
Wow.
And my mom is Jewish and she's Ashkenazi. So my brother and I were raised like non-religious. We did high holidays. But the cool thing is, as I got older, I decided to choose to become more Jewish.
And that's
and
beautiful.
to understand what it meant to be Jewish. For instance, with my brother, who's like not religious at all, who's dating a Muslim girl. So it's like, I mean, it could go either way.
It can go either way.
And my parents are still together.
Wow.
So I think I'm an outlier, but it's interesting. I want to marry Jewish now. I've chosen, but in the past I didn't care who I dated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting journey, but at the same time, when you choose it, it's actually more powerful, I think, than just being like born into something.
It's much more special to be able to choose it and to, but let me ask you, should I give my child the ability to choose it? Should I not educate I believe that Judaism is number one for me.
Yeah.
This is my number one, like everything. This is my life. I teach it. Would anyone ever suggest, don't grow up your child Jewish? Let them wait till they're 18 and then make their own decision. Or should I start educating them with all the values I have? And you know, the best ideal situation is to try as much as you can to bring them up with those values, you know, if you believe in them. And hopefully that's what you're looking for. And you should know, as a whole picture, there are times where it works for some, but as a picture in whole, as a general picture, the risks of the Judaism really staying are much, much higher. The risk of it not staying if you are interfaith relationship, because it can go either way. It can
Just
go
says it
either way.
in last week's parasha, the exact thing, same thing. Even if the woman's Jewish and the male is
Exactly.
non-Jewish, it's
Yes,
still
the
a
child's
big
Jewish. The child will be considered Jewish, but at the end of the day, what kind of upbringing will that bring to the child? He's still going to be confused.
Yeah, we were confused.
It's confusing, yeah.
Spiritual.
Yeah. So any other questions, any other thoughts? Okay. So but don't forget the Jewish promise that we will always be around, and we will always be here. We are an amazing people, and you should all be proud of it and stay strong. There are some amazing girls out there. Actually, it makes it easier. You may think it's not easier, but it makes it easier when you have a more defined direction of what you want to look for. The more defined it is, the more easy it is to find someone that's made for you. And there's many people out there that all it takes is one. And hopefully we can help you find that very special one. And if not, you're already there. Just this week, we found out that one of our first people that were involved with Eish Lit just got engaged.
Mazel tov.
Isn't that nice? So hopefully the guy that I had this argument with will watch the video. And I can also send it to anyone else who
Yes.
wants to know. Do you know anyone that's looking?
Nobody had this question, but I just want to.
Thank you. Thank you. One second, let me just turn it off. Thank you.